I see some faces that I didn't see much on. I have a small practice on Ellsworth Avenue. My colleague Jason Greenwald's here with me, also sitting in the back. We do a lot of work with developers and workforce housing, affordable housing on more of a single purchaser sort of level, trying to help people move into areas where opportunities are arising. Like I'm on the Oakland Planning and Development Corporation board. I also serve on the Wilkinsburg Land Bank board. Just trying to make housing accessible at DEI and using various legal processes that are available to us. We've done a lot of conservatorship defense work and also a lot of filing of conservatorships with the goal towards not necessarily like high-tech affordable housing, but accessible housing for populations that were traditional homeowners and don't have generational wealth. So I'm pleased to be here and looking forward to this.
Hi, I'm Ann Lewis. I'm the Executive Director of Steel Rivers COG and the Tri-COG Land Bank. Our land bank operates in Allegheny County outside of the city of Pittsburgh. We are the land bank, the name Tri-COG, formed out of the councils of governments and a focused attention on the problem of vacant and blighted and abandoned properties. Our land bank is a multi-jurisdictional land bank. Our members are municipalities, they're school districts. In Allegheny County, we currently have 40 members, and we operate in 30 of the 130 municipalities in Allegheny County.
Hi everyone, my name is Jason Tagano. I'm the CEO of Level Equity Building. Level's a nonprofit organization. We're dedicated to affordable for-sale home ownership. So we work in communities to identify, acquire, either rehabilitate or build new construction, single-family homes most commonly, and then simultaneously working with the existing community to identify existing community residents who currently rent, and we help them to qualify for home ownership through first-time home buyer programs, certificates, funds. We're currently working on a project in the Keys Rocks.
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Terrence Verchek. I'm Executive Director of the Keys Rocks Community Development Corporation and lifelong resident of the Keys Rocks and a founder of the CDC with a number of other stakeholders came together. We represent in the early 2000s, we represent the 12,000 residents of McKees Rocks Borough and Stowe Township, two municipalities that are inner ring suburbs of Pittsburgh, but outside of the city. And as Ann mentioned, that's a very important distinction for many reasons, which we'll talk about. We really formed out of a response to Blight and an opportunity to fill empty, vacant spaces to bring vitality back to our community. And that's everything from residential, industrial, commercial, waterfront, all across the board, right? We started primarily as a real estate-oriented community development corporation. That's still our primary function. However, we've really evolved over the years listening to the community to now have also really becoming a thought leader when it comes to how we approach our work in the Stowe Rocks community collectively. Working with a web of different organizations inside the community and throughout the region, a lot of our focus has really shifted to think first about the person and then about the place serving the person that we look to build, right? So that's a really defining part of who we are and how we look at the world.
Well, like I said, we're going to start with Terrace, and this is a good place, I think, to start because Keys Rocks is a good representation of a lot of the towns that we have in Greater Pittsburgh, former industrial giants that were, really vibrant communities that have suffered all the losses for the reasons that I mentioned at the outset. But Terrace is doing a lot of great work in that community with the Keys Rocks Community Development Corporation. I've worked with them in the past on some good projects. Terrace, can you tell us exactly what are the challenges that you're seeing in Keys Rocks, and what is the CDC specifically doing to battle blight there?
Yep. So again, I think it's really in those two big buckets, the place and the people. So let's start with the place-based bucket, because I know that's the primary focus here. So, again, tremendous vacancy in Blight. I think 1 out of 4 properties in McKees Rocks and Stowe Township is vacant or Blight. So, again, that's a big elephant to tackle. And, you know, we've been at this for 20 years, working on different strategic projects. You know, one of the projects that Scott and I worked on in our downtown, it's the Roxy Theater. It was a large vacant building, a former vaudeville house that we've been able to, after 15 years of hard effort, bring back around, and now it's a thriving venue. So now it's about filling the spaces around it. That's hard to do for several reasons. You know, East Liberty has been able to do some incredible things, and early on when I started, I brought Tony Dolan from Walnut Capital just when Bakery Square was being announced to McKees Rocks. And I think this gets to one of the fundamental place challenges. He said, terrace retail follows rooftops. This area, East Liberty, Lawrenceville, blessed with being literally right next door to those rooftops that have a lot of capacity from a financial perspective, but also an interest in helping to bring communities back and being part of something edgier, willing to be more first in. With the western suburbs, McKees Rocks in particular, next door, we have, you know, a thriving community called Kennedy Township, but it's older. It's, you know, more of kind of the suburbs that you think about. So you don't see a lot of spillover in coming into McKees Rocks to go out for a bite to eat or go to a show or something like that. So we don't have those rooftops right around us, and that's been, not having that market has been a huge obstacle for us. We, as I said, we're able to get the Roxy Theater off the ground. We have thousands of people coming in there each week. We have a line of people out there 5 nights a week on our main street. We put an RFP for the properties around it, the vacant properties, a couple of years ago. And, you know, it took the Roxy a couple of years of the pandemic and everything to get up and really thriving, but it had been. We got no responses to the RFP to call for developers for these empty spaces. We were figuring that, okay, once we get the Roxy and we own these properties, developers are going to want to be next to it. We're not there yet. We're still several steps away. So getting that market demand up to a place that we can attract the type of development that we need is one big obstacle. Another obstacle is being outside of the city. We are 2 small municipalities. These municipalities are extremely poor, for lack of a better term, as is the school district, right? So we just don't have the resources and wherewithal that neighborhoods in the city do. Additionally, you know, the county, again, is kind of limited in capacity at the moment. And I know that the county executive and the head of economic development are really trying to expand that capacity, but it's been tough, right? So it takes the time to do things and multiplies it by 5 when you're trying to do it on a shoestring, always. And again, you have the type of land to cover. So that's another limitation from the place perspective. I think from the people perspective, you know, we are blessed by the slowed pace of development in that it's giving us time to really wrap our hands around generational poverty and trauma in our community, because we are very intent to make sure that the people drive the development in this community and can benefit from it, right? We want to attract new. We've been starting to see a trickle in of younger, newer families and businesses. Still a trickle. It's not where we need it to be. But at the same time, the majority of the community is still one immersed in poverty and generational trauma. And unwrapping that is probably the greatest obstacle I've experienced in my career. The real estate thing is easy compared to trying to undo generations of trauma, right? And I don't think that nationally we figured this out yet. It's not about creating programs. You can put the best programs right in front of someone, say they're free. They're not taking advantage of them. Why? why is this behavior so mystifying to us? Well, it's the depths of trauma. It's a very deep issue. So we're trying to unravel that to make sure that, you know, again, our residents can rise along with the community, they can take advantage, lay down roots and become long-term sustaining members of the community, which is why, you know, Level's been such a fantastic program, because what greater wealth building than home ownership? And again, Jason's program is very patient too in helping people to be able to move at the pace that they can and to meet them where they live.
One of the things that I was really struck by when we were kind of having our pre-conversations was the demographics of the existing population, which clearly you're looking to lift up. But specifically in terms of household incomes and the rate of home ownership that's in the Keys Rocks now, I was startled by that information. Why don't you share that with us too?
Yeah, really the imbalance between renters and homeowners in the community. I've seen that really happen firsthand in the last 20 to 30 years, and we have seen that turn, as many communities have, where longtime families, you know, the heirs are either out of town or don't have an interest in maintaining the property, but can't. And because the market is so soft, those properties ultimately go to the highest bidder of, you know, who's interested in a market like this, which tends to be predatory buyers. And these typically are LLCs, you know, folks that are have nothing to do with the community. And we have seen a proliferation of this over the last 20 years or so, to the point where we have a huge housing crisis in the Keys Rocks and Stowe Township. Our residents can't find quality, affordable housing, right? What they can afford is really substandard. It's rodent infested, quite literally. It's a bad lease where the landlord isn't maintaining basic infrastructure in the residence, and it's really created a really big turnover in our residents, to the point where 1 out of 3 or 4 students that start in Stowe Rocks in September aren't there in May. And again, a lot of that has to do with the shortage of quality, affordable housing. And it's not just in the type of affordable housing we think that is run by Allegheny County Housing Authority or Pittsburgh Housing Authority. We're working with Action Housing right now on a fantastic development. But so many of it is turning over these properties in our residential neighborhoods that are right now not just vacant, but are in the hands of a slum landlord that's basically taking quality housing off the market, right? So, you know, how do you basically weed them and seed it with more positive development? So that's a big focus of ours too.
And that's not something that only the MRCDC can control. That's something that you have to do in conjunction with local municipalities and folks that will have the I guess the carrot or the stick, right?
Absolutely, it's got to be a full-on team effort. You know, one of the things we talked about, Scott, is that, you know, it's taken a lot of time. We've built over time a really good working relationship with the Keys Rocks Borough. It's improving every day. There's, you know, again, it's been very intentional and strategically. I think we've really come into convergence and we're supporting each other well. It's been a lot more challenging in Stowe Township, quite honestly. There's some older leadership there that's kind of been like, literally the words were let Stowe do Stowe that we received. So it's like, okay, but we're just seeing a ton of just like really unnecessary blight happening, especially in the main business district right now, that is causing businesses to leave, it's causing families to leave. We're hopeful that there seems to be some new leadership on the horizon there, that we'll be able to form a good working relationship there and start to be able to turn over some of these problems.
Well, I think that's a really interesting point, because a lot of times when I think of blight, I think of just vacant properties that have been abandoned. But oftentimes it is these bad actors that own the property and are investing in them. So I think that's an interesting aspect to this. I want to end on a high note because there's really great things that are happening that I know you've been a part of. I want you to talk a little bit more about the Roxy and specifically tell the folks from Philly how long that took and where it came from, and then also talk a little bit about your streetscape along Chartiers Avenue that's about to.
Yeah. So the Roxy Theater, it was built in 1928. Originally as a vaudeville house and then converted for film. In 1980, it was converted into a banquet facility. In the early 2000s, it closed, the owner went bankrupt, it was shuttered. When we did our original strategic plan in the early 2000s, one of the main points that came out of it was that this could be a catalyst to drive development into downtown and to basically give people a reason to come to downtown Keys Rocks. So we set out on a long journey in the early 2000s, and when the CDC formally came online in 2004, to first try to acquire this property, which took several years in fits and starts, and we eventually did. And then we eventually found an ownership team, because that was really the hardest part of it all, was finding a group that saw the promise there, that was willing to make an investment. And it turned out it was a group of individuals that came together. Actually, the folks that did the Thunderbird over in Lawrenceville, and been a great team to work with. Worked really hard to make the investment. Zach was actually helpful when he was with LISC to help us build a capital stack that was so challenging. We had Hillman and Hines that came in for foundation support, but we couldn't get anyone else to play, so the CDC had to put a lot of our own money into it, which we just finally paid off now. But we were able to pull everything together, and in May of 2019, this fantastic venue reopened as a 1,500 seat concert venue, and it has been booming since then. It's a fantastic example of how you can combine the old. And I mean, we had a fantastic team of architects that Jen Skarziak she's with, I'm trying to remember
They were out of Cleveland?
No, they're out of here.
Oh.
I'm going to give them a plug. So anyways, Jen was able to uncover all of the old from 1929, pulling down the drop ceilings and peeling things back to reveal treasures we never knew existed. Restore them, but at the same time adding a modern functionality to the space that really the two of them come together so beautifully. So it is literally a facility that's booming now. As I said, we're bringing thousands of people to the downtown every week. There are lines of people outside the door of the Roxy and leading up our business district, again, multiple times a week. So it really has fulfilled its goal to do that. And again, part of this downtown development plan, we also knew that an associated renovation of the streetscape was necessary. Downtown Keys Rocks and Chartiers Avenue was kind of redesigned in the late 80s to allow traffic to move more quickly through the town, because the town leaders at the time said, well, gee, having people stopped in traffic is not a good thing.
It sounds like a ring road concept that we heard about walking on our tour here earlier.
Yeah, we had a one-way path, and then a back alley was turned into inbound Route 51. So it was really dysfunctional. So we were able to undo that in 2014. Again, we worked with Scott and Lammy Grubb to develop a fantastic streetscape plan. We were able to finally get that funded in 2021. The first phase of it, $3.5 million. We're in design and engineering now, and hopefully we'll be in construction next year. That should really change the face of our downtown, not just from an aesthetic perspective, but more importantly, from a pedestrian safety perspective. Narrowing the roadway widths, putting curb extensions there, improving the lighting, all of that, really is going to be essential to make us a really exciting 21st century downtown.
Well, I'm excited to see you guys putting all these things in place. The Roxy makes me smile every time I hear about advertisements on the radio about shows that are happening there. So you're doing a tremendous job. And I know it takes a lot of love, and it's an effort of love for your community that makes you do it.
Thanks, Scott.
Well, I know you mentioned your work that you're doing with Jason in the community. So let's kind of transition. That's a good segue to him. So Jason, what led you to work in McKees Rocks in particular, and what inspires you to do the work that you do at Level?
So for Level, the first thing is really we need to be invited in by the community. We would not start acquiring real estate in a community until we're invited in. And so part of what led to that was the outreach of the borough and of the nonprofit, really to say we're looking for different housing strategies for the community. I think as Terrace alluded to, and if you do enough of this work, we've all probably seen it or heard it enough, that those housing typologies don't exist, just like Terrace was saying, especially in a way of quality housing stock that you or I would want to raise our own family in, right? And so we can go find a place, but if it's got mold or it's got a roof leak, no one deserves something like that. And so ultimately, getting started was getting invited in, but how we started to step into this really became, we did some assessments with Terrace and the community around the makeup of McKees Rocks. And part of what we found out is about roughly 25% of the community is home ownership, 75% of the community is rental. And just as a juxtaposition to that, if you go to a place like Mount Lebanon or Fox Chapel, the numbers are completely upside down, right? And you've got about 75, 80% home ownership. And so generically our theory just became home ownership unlocks a lot of different things for the community. But ultimately what it really does is it allows us as individuals to put down our roots in a community. And as we start to really authentically put down those roots, because we know we're living there versus I rent every year and I might have a new landlord next year, I might live in a new community next year.